From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Applications are now being accepted. Businesses looking to do major construction projects can apply to the Rebuild Rhode Island tax credit program. It's part of a new effort by the Rhode Island Commerce Corporation to spur economic growth without repeating the mistakes that led to 38 studios. Our guest on the first half of Newsmakers, Commerce Secretary Stefan Pryor. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Actually, our first half guest, Secretary Stefan Pryor, is tardy, so we're going to start with our second half guest, and that is the Democratic candidate for mayor of Cranston, Michael Sepe. Michael, thank you for joining us, and even more importantly, thank you for being on time.
And I want to thank you for the invitation to appear here this morning.
Good way to start your campaign.
Excellent.
To be on time. Actually, you were early, if I understand
correctly.
We're very early. Yeah. You want to be the mayor of Cranston. Why?
Why? I've been a lifelong, I'm a three-generation Cranstonian. My grandfather came here back in the 1890s. My father was born and raised in Cranston, and I was born and raised in Cranston. I went through all the Cranston school system, and I even have my business here in Cranston. I was on the city council for 10 years, and I really, really, really care about the city, and I think that I will be a good mayor once I get elected next November.
Usually mayors, mayoral candidates, they say they want to change something. They don't like something now, and that's why they're running. Are there things you're specifically upset about in Cranston that you want different?
Well, can I be honest with you? I was going to run 4 years ago, okay? I was going to run in 2012. What had happened was I had talked to all this, I had the endorsement from the city committee and whatnot. My dad passed away in May. My dad was my guiding light in politics because he was in politics before me. And I was
powerful man, your father, your dad, I remember, yeah.
Yeah, he was a powerful man. And I had really considered, but it kind of took the steam out of me then. So this isn't a thing that I'm just deciding on doing because of what has happened in the city. Although what has happened in the city, we do need change. And I think that the mayor hasn't withheld his end of the bargain.
And do you expect to run against Alan Fung? Is that what you're assuming right now?
Oh, I'm assuming, definitely I'm going to be running against Alan Fung. I think he's already stated that he's going to be running for re-election.
Other than the police scandal, and I'm sure we'll talk about that during the program, to Ted's question, what specific policy difference do you have with Mayor Alan Fung?
Well, I think that we have to have a better economic development. I think that he hasn't really taken a lot of high-tech businesses into the city.
Do you think that's for a lack of trying?
Well, I don't know. That I can't answer because I don't know if he's tried or if he hasn't tried to bring more high-tech into the city. I mean, he's going to take credit for a lot of the things that have happened, but a lot of the things that have happened have been going on in the city for many, many, many years. So I don't think it's for. I just think that the way we'll be able to work better with the state as far as bringing economic development into the city of Cranston.
You know, Cranston voters have seemed very wary of electing Democratic mayors in recent decades.
Very definitely.
I looked it up, about only 6 years since 1963 has Cranston had a Democratic mayor. What do you think has gone wrong, and are you worried that maybe Cranston voters, they want that check and balance of a Republican in that office?
Ted, let me tell you something. This was the basis of the Republican Party for many, many years in the city of Cranston. When I became council president in 1993, we actually changed the culture that people just weren't voting for the Republicans anymore. They started voting Democrat. We haven't lost the council we lost it once since 1993. And we've had complete control of the council. And I mean like 6-3, 7-2, 9-0, which was unheard of back when my dad was involved in politics. But I think that we've had a lot of changes, and I think that the people are starting to have more and more faith in the Democratic Party here in the city of Cranston. Since when I was city chairman, we elected 2 mayors. We elected John O'Leary and Mike Napolitano.
Didn't last too long, though.
Didn't last too long, but Mike Napolitano decided not to run. And that's when Alan Fung was able to become mayor.
So the biggest scandal to rock the Fung campaign, of course, is the police scandal. All started with the ticket gate, if you will, the ticketing flap. And I have a specific question for you on that. My understanding is you joined Councilman Paul Arquetto and Stephen Stikos to the Cranston Police Department when they were questioned as part of the internal affairs investigation into the ticketing scandal. Why did you feel the need to get involved? Why were you there?
Paul Arquetto asked me to join him.
Why?
Well, because he just didn't want to go it alone at the time, going to the police station, and he felt a little intimidated at the time.
You know, but people can understand why maybe a solicitor would be there. Why the chairman of the Democratic Party?
Well, I think that I've been the face of the Democratic Party for the past 20 years.
No doubt.
Okay, and I've been the one who's been criticizing the Republicans year after year. When Steve Laffey was mayor, it was Mike Sepe who had the voice.
But does it politicize an internal affairs investigation, a police investigation, by having the chairman of the Democratic Party there?
No, I don't think so, Tim.
Okay.
I don't think it did. Not at all. I think that he felt comfortable with me being there with him.
And what did you learn from that meeting?
Absolutely nothing.
Why?
Why? Because it was what we already knew. The question that was asked to me that day was, how do you feel about, why do you think this happened? It was intimidation of Councilman Stichels and Councilman Arquette, and that's all it was. Pardon?
Go ahead.
No, and I felt that they were being intimidated. And that was the question that was asked to me.
Are you satisfied with, it seems like the ticket gate, the fallout has kind of died down since the big state police report came out. The council had some hearings. Are you satisfied with the resolution of that controversy?
No, not yet. I think that there's still more to come out on this here. Well, I think there's going to be more money that's going to be spent. And right now we're up to about maybe $3 million, and I think there's going to be a lot more money with the suits that are going to come out against.
You're talking in legal fees.
I'm talking in legal fees. Absolutely.
How would you have handled it differently in terms of the litigation specific?
Well, for one thing, it wouldn't have happened if I was mayor. You know, I mean, this was Mayor Fung's tribunal with him, Antonucci, and Palumbo. And if I was mayor, you would
Palumbo was the former colonel of the police department, and Stephen Antonucci is
the head
president
of the union. And Mayor Fung was so entwined with these gentlemen, and I think that's why this happened. And if I was the mayor at the time, probably Colonel McGrath would still be there, Major Blackmore would still be there. And
well, look, I've done some reporting on Cranston Police Department in the past, and Colonel McGrath had also had some issues in terms of personnel and things like that.
Certainly.
So, do you think that hindsight sometimes cleans up some of the issues that the department faced?
I think it's great now that we went to the outside to bring in a colonel.
So, would you keep Michael Winquist if you became
most certainly
mayor?
Okay, and I'm going to be honest with you. In 2009, when Colonel McGrath decided that he was going to retire, I came out with a news release at that time stating that I think that Mayor Fung should have hired someone from outside the department. That was in the Cranston Herald, and I believe it was in the Cranston Journal, the Providence Journal at the time.
I want to ask you about some things beyond the police scandal. First, a political question. I've heard some people speculate in Cranston that you're being put up as kind of a stalking horse, see if Mayor Fung is weak, and then maybe you'd step aside for a different candidate. Are you in this for the long haul?
I'm in this for the long haul. I wouldn't have invested money into my campaign right now. I hired a public relations firm, and I wouldn't have been doing this if I wasn't in for the long haul. There's no stalking horse here. I'm running for mayor in 2016.
Do you think, assuming Mayor Fung does announce for re-election, do you think, is he so weak this is going to be a cakewalk, or do you think Cranston voters are going to...
I think this is going to be a very, very serious and very, very difficult election for myself. I know it's an uphill battle. I know he's the incumbent, and he's probably going to be able to raise more money than I can. But I'm going to be out there, and we're going to be, if we don't have the money aspect of it, we're going to be out there campaigning very, very, very hard against him.
Speaking of money, you've last check donated some of your own personal money to the campaign.
My own money.
Are you going to be accepting donations from city employees?
No. That was part of, when I was on the city council, I passed an ordinance that it was the Baby Hatch Act, which any political candidate, local candidate, would not accept contributions from any city employees.
That's it? That's baked in the cake? That's an ordinance?
That's an ordinance.
Are you seeking support from labor unions to succeed in the campaign?
Well, we'll see what happens as the campaign goes along. I really haven't sought out any labor unions yet, but I'm hoping that, the municipal workers and police officers and firefighters support my candidacy, and the teachers union.
Your announcement for this weekend mentioned a couple of your priorities as mayor, things you'd want to focus on. One of them that I thought was interesting, I was hoping to learn more about, you mentioned creating tax breaks for the elderly in Cranston. How would that work?
Well, we do have tax breaks for the elderly, but the problem in Cranston is that it's so low that many of the seniors are not able to take advantage of these tax breaks. I mean, when it's only like $30,000 for a household, the tax break doesn't really affect them that often. Because their incomes are, even with two Social Securities in a household, most of the times it's over $30,000.
So do you know how high you'd want to raise that?
I would have to see. I think that once we took office and we've seen how the finances were in the city, then we'll take it from there. When I was on the city council, we did raise it. I think it was from, say, 15,000 at the time to 20,000, and that was one of my proposals at the time.
When you look at City Hall, when you think about becoming the mayor, what do you think is the #1 problem facing Cranston? The biggest, whether it's you or Mayor Fung, whoever's mayor in 2017, what's the biggest problem they're going to face?
Well, I think the biggest problem we're going to face is the economy. And we're hoping that the economy really picks up so that the burden, the tax burden isn't on the taxpayers anymore. That we're able to generate some income from outside businesses or the businesses that do come into the city, and there won't be a tax burden for the taxpayers. But I also think that, we have to worry about, maintaining our infrastructure. We drive down the street right now, there's a lot of potholes in the city that we have to maintain. I mean, people have new cars that, and they're forever putting claims against the city because of a broken tire or a broken axle. So I think that we have to make sure that, we maintain our city services.
And when you talk about the economy, property tax is always a huge part of that discussion in any municipality. Where are you on what do you think? Do you expect tax increases if you become mayor? And what do you think about the rates right now?
Well, the rates right now, we're right up there with the rest of the state, probably one of the higher ends. And I think that that's one of the most important aspects of being mayor, is to try to hold the line on taxes.
Can you pledge that, if you were to become mayor, that you would not raise property taxes, at least within your first two years? Maybe
within my first year, I would pledge that I wouldn't raise property taxes. But you have to also see, what's funny, Mayor Fung could turn around and say, I ran a perfect government, we had no tax increases, but you don't know what's going to happen once you get in there. You don't know what you're going to find. The first thing I would do, I would order an audit. I would want a 6-month audit of the finances just to see where we stand when I'm elected. As far as January 1st, I would like an audit from July 1st to December 31st, just to see what the finances are truly in the city of Cranston.
Have you done any internal polling yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
We haven't.
Do you plan to do that?
We plan on doing.
But you give it to Channel 12.
We'll probably have one of your people from Channel 12 be doing the poll.
Hey,
but he's going to be sworn to secrecy.
A couple of policy questions. I want to get through these kind of rapidly just to see where you stand. Would you support adding more charter schools to the city of Cranston?
No.
Why not?
Because I think, the way the charter school system is set up right now is that the money follows the student.
Right.
And it's really not equitable, because even though you're taking that $14,000 or $15,000 following each student, it's taken away from the classrooms, because you still need X amount of dollars, whether you have 20 people in that classrooms or 15 people in that classrooms. And I just don't think that that's the correct way of doing it. I think the state has to come out with a better equitable way of
and they're looking at that now.
And I know that they're looking at that now.
Are you satisfied with the level of education that is coming out of the Cranston public school system?
Oh, I think we have a great public school system, but I would work along with the superintendent, I would work along with the teachers, I would work along with the administration and the school committee to make sure that they are properly funded.
Do you think the certain current superintendent should stay in place?
Oh, yes. She's brand new, by the way. I mean, she's very young, and I think that she has a lot of new ideas. I think she's going to be a great superintendent for the city of Cranston.
Yes or no, would you support driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants?
I don't think that that's a decision a mayor in the city of Cranston has to make.
But you don't have an opinion on that?
I don't really have an opinion on that. I really don't.
What do you say to people who and it sort of goes to one of Ted's questions, look, if I elect a Democratic mayor, there's not going to be a lot of check and balance between the executive branch
I think there will be.
And the city council.
I think there will be, because I don't see.
As we talk here, the current city council president is sitting in the studio supporting you, obviously.
The current city council president, him and I have been friends for 50 years, okay? And
Doesn't that underscore my question?
All right, no, and I'm not going to underscore your question, but I'm going to get to it.
Okay.
But him and I don't agree on everything.
All right.
Believe me when I tell you, we've had some serious arguments. I've had some serious arguments with members of the city council, and they don't always agree on things that I come out with in the paper either. But, you know, I think that we'd be able to get along. And, you know, the makeup of the council, there's 9 individuals, and I'm going to have to get along with all 9 individuals, whether they're Democrat or Republican.
I have to ask you to weigh in on this before we go. The big scandal, not the police scandal that happened in your city, and it was more of the state. The Park Avenue Bridge that was shut down for quite some time, and there was some belief that might have been to try and motivate the roadworks projects to move forward. As we all know, Speaker Nicholas Mattiello's law office is right near that bridge. What did you make of that? What did you hear about it? What was your take on that?
My take on it was that the bridge was decrepit, but I don't think that they had to do it right at that time. I think that they could have held off. And
You
I
think it was suspect?
Well, you know, I don't know, but at least it's open now. It's usable. Trucks could go over it, buses can go over it, which was very dangerous because there's schools right in that area. Buses go to Parkview and buses go to Cranston East over there. So I think it was very dangerous, and I'm happy it's reopened. I'm happy that Nick Mattiello, the Speaker of the House, is satisfied. And maybe we will get these bridges fixed in some type of manner.
And you know, Tim points out, arguably the most powerful politician in the state is a Cranston Democrat, right. Nicholas Mattiello. Have you talked to him about your campaign?
Yes, I have, and I'm hoping I have Nick's Speaker Mattiello's support, and I know he's going to be at our opening on today.
We're taping on Friday. Right? He knows you're going to see it on Sunday, folks.
Sunday, all right. So he's going to be there, and I hope he says a few encouraging words for me.
All right. As we go to a break, I have to ask you this: if you know, when election time comes, as we approach the campaign season, because we are a little bit early here, will you debate your opponents on Channel 12?
We'll debate them any place, anywhere.
Right.
Wherever he wants to be.
Michael Sepe, who is the Democratic candidate for mayor of Cranston, thank you very much for joining us on the program. We really enjoyed having you on. I'm sure we'll have you back.
I hope you invite me back.
And keep coming on time.
Yeah.
I'm always on time.
And we'll see what the second half of the program brings. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my right is Ted Nesi from WPRI.com, and we are joined on the second half now by the Commerce Secretary, Stefan Pryor. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you, Tim and Ted.
You had we prevented you from having an event today at the State House.
Yes.
The Volvo Ocean Race. Talk to us about it briefly.
We're so proud and pleased. The Volvo International Ocean Race will have its only North American stop in Newport, Rhode Island, once again in 2018. We had terrific success this past May. The 2015 stats came back. We had over 130,000 visitors, tens of millions of dollars of expenditure. We had a terrific showing. It blew people away, frankly, globally, that we produced such a terrific event. We're bringing it back in 2018, and it is in tandem with our new marketing campaign for Rhode Island. So it's really going to help to put us on the map, if you will.
Briefly, I read the study that threw out a bunch of numbers about how successful it was. Do you know what Rhode Island's take, and I don't mean the $32.2 million that was injected in the economy according to that report, but what the tax revenue was? Do you have any idea what that
I don't have that figure, but I can tell you
Isn't that important to know?
I visited the event. I saw people actually participating, and I would say even more important, there were people from around the world who in many instances were in Newport, Rhode Island for the first time. Business people who produce ships, who produce all manner of things, who learned about Rhode Island through that lens. It's a fantastic event.
Great. So we were talking at the top, you rolled out the new economic development incentives this week that were in the new General Assembly budget. The biggest concern I hear about those is it sounds like you will be the king sitting in your office at the Commerce Corp saying,
I assure you I'm not royalty.
So how are you going to actually handle the process of handing out these pretty lucrative tax credits and such?
Well, it's very important to note that the Commerce Corporation Board, a board of appointed citizens, and in another case, the 195 Commission, they're the decision makers, at least in tandem, usually solo, for the allocations. So there's a vetting process, there's a staff process, there's a laid out set of regulations now that flesh out the statute, that ensure checks and balances, that ensure that we, in the case of the real estate tax credit, we get an asset. The real estate is built before the dollars flow. In the case of the jobs tax credit, that the jobs exist and are paying personal income tax before the dollars are pledged back to the business. So all those things are in place. What's I think most important about our announcement this week is that there's a first mover advantage. If companies want to take hold, seize the opportunity, the first 500 jobs are awarded tax credits at the maximum amount allowed under the program, the first 500 jobs. And there's an initial deadline for the real estate tax credit program for brick and mortar developments. That's November 25th, right before Thanksgiving. The point being, get your applications in, get them in early.
How much interest are you getting?
We're getting some very good interest. Now, you both know this. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be that all the transactions happen and all the groundbreakings happen instantly. No, but we are getting some terrific interest from manufacturers, from office tenants, from companies that are looking to do R&D and want to get one of our new innovation vouchers to have it paid for at a local university. We're seeing a good number of people express interest. We want to keep drumming that interest, keep making sure that people actually apply and move all the way through to groundbreaking and ultimately ribbon cutting.
In Post 38 Studios, lawmakers capped the tax credits for rebuild at $15 million.
Yes.
The administration, the Raimondo administration, was not happy about that and tried to change it. So is it causing any problems?
You know, I'm very pleased with the way the legislative package worked out. My job is to advocate for the resources we need to get the job done. I feel like we did get that. The governor's leadership was terrific. Speaker Mattiello, Senate President Paiva, they were fantastic. We are not having problems. As a matter of fact, we're finding that the tools are working very well in fitting the problems that are being presented to us by companies, trying to meet the needs of companies.
You look around Rhode Island, there's a lot of empty buildings here. The Superman building is a prime example. Why do we need a tax incentive to build more buildings?
It's very important in a market, in an office market, to have fresh office stock, to have new floor plate configurations that meet the current needs of businesses.
So what we have is old and doesn't meet the standards of business.
Sometimes for some users. Now, having said that, some of our beautiful historic structures will be very appealing for some of the modern office users, and we're certainly going to market them, and there are special incentives for historic rehab in our Rebuild Rhode Island tax credit.
The most talked about project on the 195 land is the potential Wexford million-square-foot life sciences complex.
Yes.
The governor told us on the show last week she hopes to get a deal there by the end of the year. But, you know, it sounds like a lot of the Wexford space would be used by Brown University, which has just kicked off a campaign to raise $3 billion. So why should Rhode Island be using these tax incentives, which are limited in dollar amount, to subsidize Brown, which is bringing in all this money?
First of all, let's get the deal together before we worry about which participant is getting what. We still need to crystallize that deal. We're at the LOI stage, which is an interim stage.
Letter of intent.
Letter of intent en route to a full contract. But we're very optimistic. In terms of what the subsidies or investments or tax incentives would go to, it's very likely that the uses of those kinds of dollars would be to write down the cost of things like laboratory space. That kind of space needs to be affordable, and other kinds of spaces of that kind.
So you think you can target, even within the Wexford complex, how the Rhode Island subsidies get used?
Probably, but I'll tell you that those conversations are yet to occur, and there may be collaboration spaces that include universities but connect to the private sector that are impacted by our tax incentives. We need to make sure that that project is, for the region, in fact for the country, an optimal project, a great project, an attractive one. We need to make sure that it works, that it pencils out, as they say, that the budget makes sense and works. That's going to be our objective.
Mr. Secretary, last time we had you on the show, we talked a lot about the PAW Sox, and I think it's telling that we haven't even asked one question about that yet.
I'm delighted.
Yeah, well, we'd be remiss if we didn't,
Okay.
right? Where do things stand with the PAW Sox? When is the last time the state's talked to them? Give us an update.
The lead on conversations thus far regarding Providence options has been the city of Providence. They've been in most recent conversations with the PAW Sox. We too have been in conversations with the parties, including the city, and we're working together to see whether there still are some strong options for Rhode Island. You know, this is a treasured team. We still believe that it makes sense for the PAW Sox to remain in Rhode Island. We think there can be a deal that makes sense to them and to the taxpayer.
There's a lot of buzz about the possibility of Citizens Bank moving into the Superman building. Are you talking to them about that?
You know, we don't talk about individual transactions,
All right, I knew
individual
you'd do that.
companies.
So,
Yes.
when you look at the Superman building, do you think it has to, any deal that involves that with the state involved would have to use the tax credits as created in that bill, or could you see a one-off special situation, maybe special legislation for the Superman building?
I could see for a larger complex, I'm not going to talk about any particular building either, but for a larger complex, I could see how there could, at certain points in time, be special legislation. But I will tell you that I think the tools we have are pretty powerful. For most situations, I think when you combine the tools, the real estate tax credit, tax increment financing, the jobs tax credit, they can work together to get the job done.
Real quick, and we have 20 seconds left. With the Volvo race coming, are we going to see any more infrastructure improvements down in Newport? Do you anticipate?
Those are very, very preliminary conversations that are occurring along those lines. I don't know yet.
Okay, our guest on the second half of Newsmakers, Commerce Secretary Stefan Pryor, and we want to thank Michael Sepe, who's running as a Democrat in the for mayor of Cranston. If you missed any of it, online, WPRI.com. Ted Nisi, I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.